Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Soulful Abundance Festival. I'm your host, Elise Preston, founder of Be More Connected, and today I'm so excited to be here with the amazing Tiffany Wong. Welcome, Tiffany.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Yes, thank you so much for being here. And Tiffany Wong is a Chinese-American interdisciplinary artist currently exploring decolonial healing and BIPOC liberation through painting and writing. She believes that art is a powerful medium for embodied connection with both the self and the collective. She also facilitates workshops for BIPOC to deepen our decolonial healing through empowering inter-sovereignty and creative expression from a trauma-informed and anti-oppression lens. It gives her so much joy to gather in a way that encourages collective healing and self-accountability from a place of abundance. So, Tiffany, I'm so thrilled to be able to have a conversation with you today about how art can be used as a decolonial and trauma-informed medium for our healing, but would love to be able to start off by learning a bit more about you and your own journey of healing that allowed you to do this powerful work you're doing in the world today.
Yeah, thank you again for having me. I'm really excited about this conversation and overall through the festival. So I feel like this question is always a little bit overwhelming because there's so many things I can say.
Sure.
But I guess what I can share is that I started on this journey, I feel like way before even like I knew consciously, because I grew up, like really nourished by being encouraged to be creative and playful, as well as really focusing a lot actually through music. And throughout the years, I cultivated my skill and love for music. And really naturally, it developed into other mediums, such as painting, as I still do now, and writing. And something that I just had a conversation with a friend recently. I was like, how do you choose mediums? And how do you like decide on painting? And I told them that I think that creativity and the art of storytelling and expression is really at the core. And I think that the medium for me, I'm pretty free-handed with it. It could change at any time.
Yeah.
And so throughout my adult years, through college and post-college, I began to integrate creativity and expression of art. I define art as really broadly, into my exploration of my internal world, as well as how I explore myself in relationship with the world. And so as I grew and matured and learned and, entered into different types of relationships, I saw art get closer and closer to me. I learned and noticed in my body at the beginning of my painting journey that it was one of the few times where I felt really present, and that I left my judo sessions rested. And it was a different kind of rest, from just sleeping. It was like a really deep, soulful rest. And then I was really curious about it. And then I followed a little more. And when I began to deconstruct the ways that I saw the world through, and kind of looked at my story and about my family story when it comes to our Chinese lineage, as well as through the lens of anti-oppression and systems, art came with me.
Yes.
And it was kind of it was a dance of leading into things that sometimes felt hard and scary, and then having the space to kind of back away from a little bit and play and have fun. But then it was there for me when things felt like I wanted to press in a little bit more. And with this dance, I also started to see around me, like, how did people interact with that, with my sharing of my work, telling stories. And so it became a community experience too, as my communities changed over the years.
Sure.
It also showed me who really wasn't interested and resistant to the work. And that was also interesting to kind of observe. So I did. So a lot of, I think my journey for now has been kind of like my, in a way, one-on-one relationship with art. But in the past few years, I started to teach a little bit more. At first, it was just kind of a technical teaching of how do you mix paints and, paint with watercolors. And then eventually I started incorporating what I really resonated with is less about what you produce, but more of how you interact with creativity and yourself, and teaching how to let go of perfectionism, let go of end products, and how to cultivate the practice of being able to meet yourself and find a little bit of peace or joy or reckoning with where you're at through, I guess, like I teach mostly through painting or art, more traditional ways of art. And yeah, and then I guess in this chapter, I lead BIPOC and create spaces where I guess I take less of like a teacher or like a leader role, but more of a facilitator, where I can create a space where people can practice trusting themselves and being held in a space where you have autonomy to do what feels good for you. Because I would say in most spaces, where we exist, it's just like, it's not for us. So it just can't be that nourishing.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Yes. Wow. And there's so much that you shared here about your journey of using art as a tool for yourself, for exploring your inner world, how you also relate with your outer world, and then how your own embodiment of these teachings allowed you to be a facilitator, be a space holder, or for others to have these kinds of deep and transformative experiences where they're interacting with their own creativity and meeting themselves in new and different ways. And I think it is so powerful how you said that this practice invites people into a space of trusting themselves and doing things that intuitively feel good for them, that feel right, that feel true. Because as BIPOC, so many of the spaces that exist, so many of the spaces that we move through every day, we're not created with BIPOC in mind, and don't necessarily support or facilitate that level of trust or doing what feels right and true. So what are the ways as leaders, as visionaries, as healers, we can start to carve out and create these spaces for ourselves and welcome each other in?
Yes, exactly.
Ah, beautiful. And so for folks who are maybe new to this idea of using art as a tool for healing and for decolonization, I'm wondering if you could break this down for us a bit more and just really paint a picture of what this could look like for our listeners.
Yeah. Yes. I think that number one, it's going to look different for everyone because we all have different stories, different lineages with their own unique stories of a celebration, but also trauma. And so that means that everyone's interaction with creativity and art will look different. And I think that that framework really helps breaking down what it should or shouldn't look like. and really more of a curiosity of the possibilities of like, how do I resonate with creativity and start practicing kind of letting go of the external gaze, you know, of it, like more than like the white gaze, but like authoritarian gaze of our peers, of the people in our life, that institutions that tell us what is good for good art, but more so what is good for you. And so embracing that it's going to look different for you, but also it's in movement, and it's also not goal oriented. Like you're going to start here and then you're going to make it here. You're going to, you know, get this stamp of like, you did it.
Sure.
So it's really, I think that's letting go of those assumptions, but also letting go of the ways that we were trained to determine success. What was your question again?
But I think this perfectly really tied into some of the themes that I was hoping you could expand upon more for us, which was how can art really be used as a medium for healing and for decolonization? And so as you were saying, letting go of those external expectations, not being so linear and logical and goal oriented.
Yes. Last thing I'll say about that is I like to imagine it as my own microcosm or ecosystem that I create at my kitchen table, where things that feel really scary, like exploring self-vulnerability and self-trust, you know, is really scary. But I can spend the next 10 minutes to lean in a little bit, practice self-compassion, and just try to move in a way that feels good and nourishing for me. So I think that's kind of, for me at least, my way of approaching it. It's like I'm creating this little world where I can practice these things so that when I'm in my, you know, my big world, it kind of mirrors it.
I love this. That's such a beautiful, like tangible way for people to be able to plug into and tap into that type of experience they want to cultivate for themselves, of self-expression, of self-vulnerability. That if you can create it in your home, in your own space, it becomes a muscle that you're strengthening, that you're practicing, then you can carry it out into the world with you as well.
Yes, exactly.
And I'd love to be able to talk a bit more with you about how your connection with your ancestors informs the work that you do in the world.
I love this question. It informs me by first reminding me that what I'm doing right now in this lifetime is not like I'm like the first one to, you know, go through this new thing, and I'm finally making change for my lineage. I'm reminded that the people that came before me are human like me, and in ways that, you know, of course, there are passed down traumas. I believe that healing and ways of thriving is also passed down. Yes. That the creativity in me is not just born, you know, just within me. It's cultivated through many generations. And yeah, that there's this like fluidity of those who came before me and those who are going to come after me. And I usually invite my ancestors, especially my maternal grandmother, to support me and to guide me, you know, before my art sessions, but also before my facilitation, my workshops. Because, yeah, it's just like, I don't know, time and space is weird.
So true.
So I might as well start, you know, cultivating that relationship.
Yes. And I love that way that you described not only trauma, pain, wounding being passed down through our lineage, but also healing and connection and celebration being something that is passed down and that we can really integrate from our connection, that connection that you've described cultivating with your ancestors. And I think too, there is something that is so special about inviting that relationship, cultivating that connection with our ancestors to be able to access things that we may not be able to access alone or on our own.
Yep. Yep.
And since starting your business, since stepping more into your role as a teacher and facilitator, I'm wondering what new things have you been learning about yourself, about your lineage, about how you really want to show up in the world and move with greater authenticity and trust?
Ooh.
I know
Another
that was many
beautiful loaded.
questions. Yeah, I was like, that's kind of many questions in one, but
No. Right now, I am on an art sabbatical where I'm taking actually a break from facilitating and space holding. And I set it up to be indefinite, meaning I'm going to take as much time as I want and need. And this is the first time I've done this, but I'm in a stage of growth where I'm exploring how to break free, or at least trying to dismantle like capitalism and internal capitalism. And in this art sabbatical, I have been really confronted with just so much internalized, all the things of oppression, where it makes me feel shameful to be taking this time to, almost like not engage with my community in that way. And there's guilt for not, making more money, and for discrediting myself in knowing that this is the long haul. When I rest, when I create from a place of integrity, I show up to my community, in a way that is truly thriving. And that can look like many different ways. It could look like facilitating and space holding. But just as much as I want everyone, us all to rest and to thrive, I was like, I get to have that too. And to be thankful, actually, of just like, it really is a privilege to be able to take this time. And yeah, so what's present right now is practicing the vulnerability of sticking to my values. And it's not easy, and it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard because I feel the resistance.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I just want to say, as you were sharing this, like, this is really landing for me and really hitting for me right now. This conversation around dismantling internalized capitalism and the ways in which we have all been so intensely programmed and conditioned to feel shameful about resting, to feel guilty when we're not plugged into all of those systems that would encourage us to hustle and burn ourselves out. And so it feels so inspiring to just receive your story and hear about this beautiful space that you are creating for yourself of this art sabbatical, and taking as much time as you need to really be able to practice your values and to feel into that space of resting and creating from integrity in order to support yourself to show up in a way where you can really feel that you are thriving in that way. And it's just so interesting the ways that, I feel like there have been different seasons in my life where I have really been able to lean into more of this like rest and trust and surrender, and like, oh, just know how like juicy and beautiful and profound that is.
Yes.
And right now I'm like doing the exact opposite of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's just so much on my plate, and like the pace at which I'm moving, the pace at which life is going right now, it does not feel sustainable. And so being able to receive this practice and this time that you're moving through right now feels so expansive for me, because I'm like, this is possible. We get to choose how we want to be creating our lives. And so I really appreciate you. I really appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Yes, absolutely.
Can I add to that?
Yes, please.
I love that you mentioned seasons, because I really do believe in seasons, and sometimes seasons are really long, but like I'm so trusting in the movement of expansion and contraction. And so it's like sometimes we expand and we get to that edge, but it's like for me to know that I have permission to contract, and that like I won't ever be stuck in one phase, of either always expanding for the rest of my life or only contracting and getting, being my hermit self.
Totally. Mm-hmm. Yes, I love that. The permission, giving ourselves permission to contract and expand, and trusting in the change and the fluidity, knowing that it's not possible to be in one state for forever. All time, right? Forever. And I think that just having that framing and having that understanding in our mind can allow us to give ourselves more grace, no matter what we're moving through, because of the impermanence of that season, of that state.
Yes.
That there are other things we can experience beyond that. Beautiful. And so I would also love to be able to hear a bit about what you're learning during this art sabbatical. I think that this is an experience too that maybe you're still in the middle of and like integrating and processing. But if there are any nuggets of wisdom at this time that you have to share, I would love to hear.
Yes. Right now I'm exploring within my art sabbatical, so through art, but also I think through life, is really like a playful exploration of time travel. So I'm working on a collection of art, and so you can see some of the pieces up here.
Gorgeous.
About time travel, of just like how we talked about like the fluidity of ancestry and time and space. And a lot of my work centers around inner child work and inner child healing. So when I think about memories and revisiting or visiting my younger self, I am kind of like putting a little bit of a sci-fi spin on it, of just like, it's like going through a portal, and in that portal I get to speak to my younger self, like when she is playing or when she's hurting, when she feels alone, and I get to come as my adult self and literally talk to her. And the healing that we have in this relationship of trust gets pulled back to me too.
Right.
And it really is like, it really is like time traveling, because the implications are so real life. It impacts every relationship that I have, in gaining security in my worthiness, in finding secure and interdependent relationships.
Right.
So my artwork is, centered on what do these time travel portals look like? What does it feel like to let my inner child choose colors that are really fun and playful, but at the same time, there are implications that are, they're deep wounds, and there's just deep impact that aren't always fun, but I get to play with all these different elements.
Yes. Yes.
in a doable way. Or what does it
Yes.
look like, to revisit joyful times where I felt in my body I was really free.
And I love how you said, play with all these different elements in a doable way, because sometimes I think being in that space of um, inner child healing or any kind of personal development and discovery work, it can feel heavy, it can feel hard, it can feel intimidating.
Yeah.
And so being able to step into this work through the medium of art does invite more of that lightness, play, creativity, even though, as you said, it may still bring up um, connections to places or spaces that are hard, that asks us to confront certain things that may be challenging, that there are ways that we can access these parts and be able to welcome more healing and understanding and recognition that can be playful, that can be joyful, that can be warm and fun. And it doesn't always have to feel like such a deep dive, like death and rebirth cycle, scary, intimidating kind of experience.
Yes. Can I add to that?
Please do.
So from like the trauma-informed lens, like a lot of it in my own work, but also with other folks, is knowing that we and I have choice at every single step.
Mm-hmm.
And when something feels really overwhelming to our bodies and our nervous systems, like we get to choose to do what's doable. So it's okay to back off, revisit it later if it when it feels a little bit safer.
Sure.
And that like we don't need to force ourselves to do anything we don't want to do, because trauma forces us to experience things that we're not ready, to do or don't want to. And so like that doable piece is an important, very, very important piece. Even with artwork, sometimes I don't paint because I don't want to. And giving myself permission, that's okay.
That it's all okay. Yes. And yes, that I feel like introducing that trauma-informed lens is so important. And the definition of trauma that really like blew my mind and helped me to understand the experience of trauma in so much more of a multidimensional way is that trauma is any time that we experience something that our nervous system doesn't have the resources or the ability to process or integrate that experience. And so sometimes we do think about trauma having to be only operate or look in one way, like extreme abuse or neglect or poverty or something, and anything outside of that isn't considered to be trauma. But actually, in our bodies, in our nervous system, it can be anything that our bodies didn't have the resources at the time to be able to process or integrate. Absolutely. And that has a profound impact on our experience of ourselves. And yes, I just love the way you talked about being able to be in that soft, graceful, understanding relationship with ourselves, about doing the things that feel doable to us and not having any level of expectation or forcing around the things that don't feel doable. So powerful. And so I would love to be able to start to weave our conversation towards a close as I ask you the question that I love to ask all of our guests, which is, what does soulful abundance mean to you?
I love that question. Right now, it means to me being able to identify what my needs are and to explore ways of getting my needs met, whether it's, with myself or, within my relationships, within my community. It could look like mutual aid. And from that place where I can really be met, by myself or with other people and have my needs met, I can then flow from a place of abundance where there's a movement of reciprocity, you know, where like trusting like what I give, like in time or, you know, in different ways I can receive, and there's this regeneration. Yeah, but I think that relationship for me is a key word in abundance, because healing is, yeah, is through, you know, like really soulful healing happens in
Yes.
relationship with ourselves and relationship with one another. And I guess last thing is abundance looks like really not feeling alone in maneuvering through, you know, the society, which is just really scary for the most part. And to know that like there's nuance and complexity in fighting for what we want and what we hope to see, and still being here and still experiencing nourishment and joy and celebration, you know. Yeah, there's like that's that space for complexity.
Ooh, yes. This is just such a beautiful and rich definition that you've shared with us here. And I love that relationship is really coming through as like such a central theme in all of the interviews that I've had so far. And I love the way that you described that like soulful healing really happens in relationship and being able to meet ourselves, be met by others in ways that feel trusting, reciprocal, nourishing, regenerative, supportive.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, I think the piece too that you were drawing in at the end about that complexity that does exist between being actively engaged around creating the shift and change that we want to see in the world, while still also holding space for pleasure, for joy, for celebration, for healing, because both are so necessary. Both
Yes.
need to be happening. And how do
Yes.
we cultivate that ability within ourselves to be available and present for both?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. Like I always think long haul, this is about long vision sustainability.
Yes, long haul, long vision. Well, I just want to say it's been such a joy and a pleasure to be able to connect with you today. Your energy is just so sweet, so pure, so integrous. Like all the words that you were sharing, um, just landed with me in such a heart-centered, aligned way. And I know that our audience is going to be excited about learning about ways that they can stay connected with you. And so if you could share that with us now, that would be wonderful.
Yes. And yeah, thank you so much again. I feel the same. Um, so the first way that folks can be connected with me is through my newsletter. And I shared a link with you.
Yes.
And can I speak a little bit to what I shared that kind of comes with that link?
Yes, that would be beautiful.
Okay, awesome. So there's a link where you can sign up for a newsletter, but also through that link, there's a little packet where it's part of this guide that I wrote last year for Black and Brown folks in relations to healing and art. And I chose a little piece of it that is a 3 week, I'm pretty sure it's 3 week series on grief, because when I think about this pandemic, there's just, I mean, in life, there's a lot of grief here. And
Mhm.
I think that when we meet ourselves where we're at, especially when it comes to such tender places, it really kind of opens up that space for how creativity can meet us.
Mhm.
And yeah, I feel like for my life right now, like the theme of grief is such a big one. So it's just PDFs of suggestions of how to interact with art along with those themes. Yeah, so that's that. Another way is you can follow me on Instagram. You can also visit my website. So those are the primary 3 ways to keep updated with me and my art.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again so much for joining us, for sharing your time, your wisdom, and your energy. And for everyone tuning in, thank you so much for joining us. And I look forward to connecting with you throughout the remainder of the festival. Be well, everyone.
Bye.